So the word term sheets, always evokes happy thoughts within most founders. One gets to think of a large funding round from a very reputed investor, the ability to sort of scale up the business and not see capital as a constraint. But what's critical is to look at term sheets in context of the entire fundraise process itself. So most of you might have gone through this process. When you think about raising funding from external sources, from VC or PE investors, you typically prepare a presentation, a pitch, a financial model, or a business plan with some projections. You will reach out to a set of investors and you will sort of pitch your story to them and hope to get interest from them. There will be multiple meetings for you. And once you get to one investor or a set of investors who are willing to sort of sign on the dotted line, at least from a term sheet perspective, you will get what is called as a term sheet. So a term sheet is a summary of the terms under which the investor wants to invest in your company. The most critical elements of a term sheet would be how much the investor wants to invest, at what valuation, and thereby what stake is he expecting for the investment he's making. Apart from the valuation and stake, what's also critical for founders to understand are the investor rights, because there will be several rights which investors, professional investors will ask for when they invest in you. And it's important to understand their implications, and I'll be covering that in my later slides. What's critical for founders to understand here is that a term sheet is non-binding. It is issued on the basis of whatever the investor has seen so far and whatever the investor appreciates in the business and the founders. But it is basically issued subject to due diligence. So the investor relies on a lot of the representation and a lot of the facts and figures which the founders have placed in front of them. And they will actually go through the next phase called due diligence, where they will validate a lot of those representations. Many times we have seen founders get carried away looking at the term sheet to say that the deal is done. The deal is half done, and there is still a few stages to cross before you actually have money in the bank. You know that the investment round is complete when you actually see the dollars or the rupees in your bank, and one should have the patience to carry through the process all the way to the end. Post getting term sheets, and if you're in a good position, you may have multiple term sheets. You may sort of have a pick of investors to choose from. Typically, you will select one lead investor, could be multiple co-investors, sign the term sheet with them. Then you proceed, like I said, to the next phase called due diligence. Due diligence, there'll be a few types. So the investors will look through all your operating metrics, financial metrics. You may have law firms coming in, reviewing your legal contracts, etc. With a view to validating a lot of the promises and a lot of the facts and figures and projections which you have represented in front of the investor during the marketing phase. Once you successfully cross due diligence, you get on to legal documentation. A lot of the terms which you see in the term sheet will actually be translated into legal language and form part of an agreement, an investment agreement or a shareholder agreement and a share subscription agreement. That is when you know that the terms and the investment is actually going to become binding. So this is a process you go through with lawyers from your side and from the investor's side. And finally, once you sign definitive documentation, each of these agreements I'm talking about, then you know that there is at least an obligation on the investor to fund you. But again, the funding may not happen immediately. There could be some findings during due diligence which the investor may want you to fix. And there could be a set of conditions, what is known as conditions precedent, a set of actions you need to do, let's say non-compliances you need to take care of before the funding actually comes through. But at that point of time, at least the investor has signed legally and bound himself to say that once you complete these conditions, you will see the funding from my side. It's a binding obligation on you.
Revolutionize your startup's equity management with Qapita. Request a demo today.